Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first call of December. My name is Steve Porcaro, and today Barry and I are going to answer your questions. Welcome to our new time. We're meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern. Our goal here is to try to make this time more attractive for people so they can use this as a lunch and learn. We're looking at the screen. We want to jump right in. We're going to take a few minutes, talk about some quick housekeeping tips. We'll do a quick introduction, and then we'll answer some questions that were sent in. And then we have a couple tips that we want to share with you as we go forward. So I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. Barry and I were just commenting. We're just recovering right now. It's been a long 3 or 4 days. We just got hit with our first snowstorm up in the Northeast. And Barry, you didn't have any weather down there in your neck of the woods, did you?
Actually, a cold front came in last night and it is 63 degrees here today. I expect when I leave after the call, I'll see people in their winter coats.
All right, no sympathy for you, but yeah, I can understand how 63 is a lot different than 23, but all right, we can handle that. So, all right, we're going to jump in. We'll do a quick housekeeping. Barry and I will do a quick introduction for those of you who we don't know. We'll talk about some strategies and tips that would like to share to kick us off, and then we'll go right into the Q&A section. So in terms of housekeeping, if you're on the call with your computer, you'll see a toolbar on the bottom of your screen, and you can see that over here underneath. You'll be able to raise your hand, you'll be able to chat, you'll be able to submit a question. If you have to do this on the phone, you'll just have to let us know that you want to talk. We'll stop and take a time out to ask people who are on the phone. Also, if you're in an area where it's a little bit noisy, please mute yourself, *6 on the phone. And if you're on the computer, you can just hit the microphone button to mute yourself. And then that way, we'll help everyone keep the background noise so we can listen to the Q&A. Secondly, if we get disconnected for some reason, and it does happen on occasion, we had a storm over the last few days, the internet phone service went down, sporadic. Just call right back in and we'll be here. If for some reason we get disconnected, we'll send out a secondary contact information. Barry, anything else for housekeeping before we forget?
No, I think just if you want to ask a question, just make and if you don't see it, it may just be because you're on full screen. So if you exit full screen, you'll be able to see all the options.
Right, thank you. Yeah, the interesting thing is people are calling in on multiple devices, computers, tablets, cell phones. So there is just a little bit of a learning curve on how to use that the Zoom software, but it's pretty intuitive. So right now we're showing the screen. We're going to have a couple slides, and then, oh great, the sun's coming out. It's been cloudy all day, and the sun is hitting me right in my face. I have to move off to the side here. So what will happen is we'll go through a few slides, and then we'll jump right in, and we'll go right to your Q&A. All right. So, quick introduction. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Porcaro. I've been the founder and owner of some of these medical device groups that you're in. I started them back at the end of 2007, but before that, I started coaching, consulting, and training back in 2005. I spent 5 years in the operating room while I was in the Navy as a surgical technologist. I got recruited by an orthopedic trauma company called Synthase. It's now owned by DePuy. I spent 12 and a half years on call doing trauma, had a great time. But after 12 years, I needed to take a break and spend some time with my family. So I was fortunate enough to move over to Arthrex, another a good company in the sports medicine segment, and it allowed me to have a little bit more of a work-life balance, and plan my life in a sense. I didn't really have many weekends and evenings as I did in trauma. And then after that, I had a small distributorship with a partner. I did some total joint work, did a lot of biologics, DME, soft goods, you name it, basically from the neck down. So for the moment, Barry and I have been running these groups, and we've been networking and sharing some experiences. And I actually met Barry on the LinkedIn groups many years ago. And I want to turn it over to Barry. She can give her little introduction. You can meet Barry if you don't know her. Barry, you ready to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I have quite an interesting career path. I started out as a trainer in retail cosmetics, and I was living in Los Angeles, and I decided I wanted to freelance because that's what you do when you live in California. You go into the entertainment industry. Well, I didn't have such good luck with timing, because right when I switched over to freelancing, there was strike after strike. There was a writer's strike, there was a director's strike, there was an actor's strike. So I said, what can I do with all of my skills around skincare and makeup that would transfer well? And I decided that I should get into dermatology or aesthetics. And this was in the days before Botox even existed. But I tried, and I ended up going for a job interview that said it was for an upscale Beverly Hills surgical practice. And to my surprise, when I showed up, it was an eye surgeon. And so that's how I landed in ophthalmology. They understood that all of my background in customer service and dealing with disposable income would come in handy when it came to elective surgery. So I started out on the practice side. And so I kind of fill in that gap from where Steve was working with hospitals and doctors in surgery. I worked with doctors concentrating on the patient side. So from private practice, I became a practice development manager, which is like a business advisor to doctors, because most doctors, as we all know, up until a couple of years ago, pretty much lived on what the insurance company paid them for most things. And elective surgery has really skyrocketed in the last 10 years. So there's a whole business in teaching doctors how to ask patients for money for elective procedures. And that's where I sort of built my niche. And I met Steve because I worked for two different startups. One of the startups, I got laid off. And I decided I really need to network now, because in addition to not having a job, I was living somewhere where I didn't know a soul. So I didn't have a physical network to rely on to help me find work. And I joined the medical device group when it only had 3,000 members. Together, Steve and I have grown that and worked with everyone to the point where combined we have over 80,000 members. So we've really seen a lot of changes both in people's use of networking and their use of LinkedIn. And it's been invaluable in helping me grow a network. So that's me in a nutshell.
All right. Thank you, Barry. Only 3,000. Geez, I remember the first time I got my first member joining the troop, the group. It was very interesting back in the early days of LinkedIn. Hard to remember what it was like way back then. But let's jump in because of time. Again, between Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up, the end of the year, there's a lot of people who are trying to figure out, we were just talking about this. People are on LinkedIn, they'll create a profile and they'll say, what do we do next? And one of the things that's interesting is that we've been talking about networking on LinkedIn, social networking. I think I'd like to frame this from a different perspective and think about it as social selling, right? Whether you're selling your company's products or services, or you're representing yourself, or you're looking to transition, get a new career. At the end of the day, what are we actually doing? where building relationships as a sales professional, as a sales leader, what you do is you build relationships. So one of the things that I want you to think about, and this is something that, again, Barry and I have been really talking about this for a long time, is really taking the time to develop that network, but you're really building relationships. And I think the interesting part is, years ago, there was a big push out there to, and we've heard this and we hear it all the time. I want to keep my business on LinkedIn and my personal on another social media platform. Well, sometimes they overlap. When we get to know somebody personally and professionally, that's when we really start to develop that relationship. We start to build that rapport. And again, we get to know, like, and trust them. And the tough part here is, in some businesses, I know you can do that. In the old days, again, relatively speaking, when we say old, brick and mortar, right? Before people had computers and smartphone, when you left your job, you would leave your work, leave your office, and actually come home. You may carry a report with you or some information you need to read, but you really weren't working. And now I think it's a little bit different. Not that we're working all the time, but that relationship building aspect is always out there. So the interesting thing about social media right now, many of us are using LinkedIn, is that it's a great place for us to create, but also nurture relationships, whether we're supporting. And again, Bari, when she was transitioning, she was looking for support. When I started my company, I was looking to network with people I worked with in the industry for 20 years. Social media, i.e. LinkedIn, allowed me to do that. So when we think about social selling, and again, we're always selling an idea, a concept, a product, a service ourselves, we have to step back and make sure we're covering all the bases. So what I want to do is take a few minutes, talk about some of the, again, the high level 50-foot thousand view of what we do when we're on LinkedIn or any social media. Again, a lot of you are using LinkedIn, but these are always tips. When we talk about 2020 right around the corner, what are we going to do differently to help separate that? Barry, you want to jump in and share a story? I know you have a couple of good ones, so.
Honestly, networking has been my lifeline. And the difference in the way I've used LinkedIn over the last 10 years, to me, like, it blows my mind. I was one of those people when I first joined, I just put up my profile and left it there. And very quickly, when as I mentioned earlier, I got laid off, I knew that if I didn't start reaching out to people, I was going to sink and not swim. And, necessity is the mother of invention. And I figured out that I could network, and joining Steve's group was very helpful. And I've watched over the years as LinkedIn changed, and it used to just be sort of, a library of resumes. You stagnate, you go on, you set up your profile, and you leave it there and you cross your fingers. It's a living, breathing thing, and you have to use it to keep it alive. So the other thing that I noticed that was changing was before, everything was all work related. And as Steve talked about the lines between social and professional blurring, that happened with LinkedIn. The algorithm and the people at LinkedIn have realized that people are people and not just their resumes. And they've started favoring updates and links and even videos that show the whole person. And I thought that was really interesting, because for years I would post articles on, new drugs in cancer, new innovations in ophthalmology related to elective surgery or dry eye or eye diseases. And my posts would get 75, 80 views. And I'm like, this is good stuff. Like, I found this article on a scientific website that does press releases for, like, earth breaking inventions, and only 80 people are seeing it. I don't get it. And as that change started happening, where they started embracing the whole person and helping LinkedIn be more holistic in terms of seeing all sides of a person, and that algorithm changed, I started seeing posts in my feed of, people with autistic kids and their autistic child's breakthrough, and somebody sitting behind the wheel of their car telling a story about the best piece of advice they'd ever gotten from a mentor. And the content has totally changed. The biggest light bulb moment for me in terms of what LinkedIn wants to see, when I decided, okay, I'm going to embrace this because I'm one of those people that kept social and professional separate. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to post something that I would have never posted in a million years. I went to a Halloween party the week before Halloween. I dressed up in a costume. I didn't know anybody there, but there was a karaoke machine. And in my previous life, I also used to sing as a singing waitress. So I can, make a fool out of myself and carry tunes. And there was a karaoke machine. So I figured, if I'm not going to talk to anybody, I may as well go have fun with the karaoke machine. So I got up and I sang karaoke, and somebody recorded it and sent me the video. I posted that on LinkedIn and talked about stepping outside your comfort zone. For me, it wasn't that big of a stretch. What was a big stretch for me was putting that video on LinkedIn. And you're probably wondering, why is she telling us this story? You know why? Because in the 11 years that I've been on LinkedIn, that is my number one most viewed post. It has 2,200 views. Go figure. I posted that somebody practically had a cure for cancer and it got 80 views, and me singing "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" has 2,200.
So Bari, there's a hidden message there. On one hand, it's funny when you think about this. There's a lot of information that we have at our disposal, at our fingertips, right? When we share information that we think is educational, informative, earth-shattering, innovative, people say, yeah, that's great. If I wanted, I could find it. But when people get to see something a little bit different, a different side of you, see, it's interesting. All of a sudden, they're saying, this is something I don't know about Bari. So again, either you had a great voice, great costume, or it was a different side of you that people didn't get to see, or a combination of all three. And again, this is part of the challenge, and we've been talking about this for a while, is that people are using social media for many different things, right? Why are we coming here? We talked about people come for support. What does that mean? Whether you're transitioning, whether you're looking for opinion and feedback, or what's your experience like in a company or in a certain job. How about asking for advice? Part of this whole thing here is, if you're looking for a group of people who have a similar background or a similar mindset, frame of references, experiences, background, or like-minded individuals, sometimes when we ask for advice, we want to know where we can find those people. And the great thing here is Bari shared some inner, what's the word? She let her inhibitions down, but that resonated with a lot of people, right? That was almost like, oh, you know what? Here's somebody who's not afraid to be themselves. If I have a question, I want to be able to ask her advice. The other thing that's very interesting when we think about social media, we have the ability to share ideas. You see a lot of surveys, a lot of polls. We're trying to get feedback to make sure, and again, I always ask people, right? There are people in my circle that I'm looking for a divergent opinion
Mhm.
and feedback because I want to make sure that I'm looking at things from a certain perspective. So we'll share ideas, we'll brainstorm, and then at the end of the day, if we're looking to grow our business, it's amazing how many people know other people that you're looking to connect with. And we don't know unless we ask. So when we talk about networking, social networking, I like to think of it as social selling for a bunch of reasons. Barry, you have something? It looks like you're ready to jump in. All right, take it away, Blondie.
I actually, this just has to do with people helping each other and asking for advice. Sometimes when I look through my feed, I see things that kind of, strike a light bulb for me. And 2 weeks ago, I had connected with someone a long time ago who has started a small business. And one of my connections is someone who specializes in taking startups big. And he had just finished his last role. The company got where they needed to go, so he was ready to move on to his next project. So he put up a post saying, I'm ready to move on to my next project. And then a few days later, I saw this woman with this startup talking about how startups struggle to break into the market. And my light bulb went off. So without asking her or without asking him, I sent her a private message and I said, you know what? I know someone who might be able to help you that I'm connected to. Would you like an introduction? And her knee-jerk response was, no, I'm too small. I'm too small for him. Thanks anyway. And the day before Thanksgiving, out of the blue, I got another private message from her. And she said, you know what? I just went and looked at his profile. I think he might be able to help me. Would you introduce me? Bing, done. Sometimes even if we're not in active need of help, it's so easy. All that took for me was one quick note to him and one click, and boom, they were introduction. All I had to do was share his profile to her in a message, and I let him know, incoming, this lady might reach out to you. And that's all it takes. It's so easy. And it felt so good to me. It was like finding that corner piece in the puzzle. It's got lost and it was the only one. And all of a sudden, there it is. And it's a great feeling to help other people, especially when it's literally no skin off your back. It's so easy to have a huge impact doing something that to you seems inconsequential.
Yeah, thank you, Barry. That was well put and well said. It's interesting, we talk about the more you give, the more you're going to get back. And that for people who network professionally, that concept and that philosophy has been out there for a while. Uh, the interesting thing is, just like when you're marketing and you're building a relationship and you're building those contacts in person, the same approach, we're going to do the same thing online. No real difference other than you're really leveraging the power of social media. So I just want to end, and again, this is between the holidays. We talked about it being a little slow, so I'm trying to answer a number of questions we received all at one point, and I wanted to go on and share a couple tips when we talk about networking tips. It's funny, at the end of the day, everyone's looking for that secret recipe, that secret sauce. Hey, Steve, what's that number one thing I need to do to be successful using social media or networking to grow my business or to get a job on LinkedIn? And again, I'm taking a bunch of the questions we've asked and I'm trying to summarize, kind of wrap them all up neatly in a package. And I thought some of these tips would be very helpful going forward. So over the next few minutes, Barry and I are going to answer some of the questions, but we're going to answer them with using this slide because it really answers many of the questions we received when it talks about what's the best way to network. One of the things that has come up on a regular basis, and we hear this all the time, is, "Hey, Steve, who do you know?" Or, "Barry, who do you know? Can you refer me to somebody who's looking to hire somebody, or can you refer me for that job?" It's very hard sometimes when you don't know somebody, right? This is why we talk about know, like, and trust. Until we develop that rapport and there's a confidence in the individual, I would love to, as Barry mentioned, we'd love to help people. But if I don't know you well enough, it's really hard for me to refer you with confidence if I don't know exactly what you're looking for. And there are times when, you know what, I get a call for something or somebody's looking for something, and right in front of me, there's the right person in the right position. But more often than not, we have to think outside and say, who do I know that can fit that? So, one of the things that's very hard is that when you're networking, I think the easiest way to start this conversation is asking for advice and counsel, or feedback, or opinion, or in your experience, right? "Hey, Barry, what have you seen, when you work for this company? What have you seen in terms of networking for the right people?" It's very hard to impose on people when you're transitioning or looking for a sale. And it does happen. We bump into people, "Hey, Steve, who do you know? I'm trying to sell my product." I have to take care, right? Some of these relationships, people I've known for 35 years, if I'm going to send them somebody, I want to make sure they're the right fit for both of them. So be very careful. And a great way to start a relationship is asking for advice and counsel. You're not imposing, it's non-threatening, and most people I've met on LinkedIn would love to share their experience and their advice. Barry, have you run into anybody who, have you ever asked for help and never received help? Or, I don't know, I think for the most part, you've been pretty fortunate when you've been reaching out to people online.
I have been. That said, though, there have been times where I reached out to ask someone, if I found a target company and there was someone that I was connected to that was connected. It happened to be a person who just doesn't use LinkedIn a lot, and I never got an answer. So to me, that highlights the fact that LinkedIn only works if you use it. That person is probably missing out and has 50 or 60 messages sitting in their inbox, right? So eventually I used regular email and followed up from my personal email to their personal email outside of LinkedIn. And I asked them if they ever got my message, because they just never check. So
Right. No, no, and that brings up a good point. I mean, part of this is the other side of that coin is that we have to be careful that we can't just assume because somebody's working in an organization or they're connected to somebody, they're in a position to refer you or to introduce you. I mean, it's funny. We think we're networking. It's like, oh yeah, just make an introduction, but sometimes it's not as easy, and sometimes we have to be careful whether we're how do I say this, without being unprofessional, not pushing yourself on that other person. And then Barry brings up a very good point from a technical aspect. You know what, you switch your emails, something happens, you get hacked. Are people still connected on LinkedIn? The tip that, again, Barry and I were talking about this earlier, is that make sure your emails are up to date. And if you want to, put the email that you want people to contact you right in your summary. Sometimes I've been on LinkedIn, and Barry and I, we laugh about it. People don't have a phone number, don't have an accurate email, and then they're over here saying, yeah, get in touch with me, and we've tried. And it's very hard to do that. So again, this is a growing pain, a learning moment, and LinkedIn is constantly evolving. It just gives us an opportunity to fine tune it going forward. So the other part here is being respectful of other people's times. And the holidays are a great example. Even though people may be on LinkedIn and you'll see them, the holidays, vacation, people get sick this time of year, people are on vacation. If you do manage to get in touch with somebody, is there any chance we can set up 10 minutes for a phone chat? Again, over the years, Barry and I have spoken to a lot of people. Emailing is a great way to start the process, but the dirty secret, LinkedIn doesn't like this. They want you to send in mails so they can charge you. Personally, I like to send an in mail or an email and set up a phone call. To me, that's the easiest way to get to know somebody, or even a video call. And I want to be professional. I don't want to take up much time other than start the process, start the relationship. Barry, you have something? It looks like you're ready to go. All right. So the next part of this is one of the things that's very helpful, as much as I like to think that we've gleaned a lot from LinkedIn, we don't know it all. LinkedIn is constantly evolving. Just when I think I know something, they'll change it. So most of the time when I'm reaching out to help other people, I'm also in the learning mode myself. It's great how the information, when you're open to that and you're more receptive to that, the information flows back and forth. There are a lot of people who have technical experience, industry experience, professional experience, all type of things that may not show up on their profile. And when you get to know them, it's amazing what you can learn, but more importantly, how you can help them while they're helping you, and vice versa. It's a very collaborative approach when it's done properly. The other thing that I think is important, and again, I'm guilty, and I'll take the hit on this, is because we're out here building relationships and networking. How often do we get an opportunity to follow up with people? I try to be as open as possible. If I didn't have to eat or sleep or take care of my kids at home, heck, I could be networking all the time, right? But yes, I do have to sleep once in a while. I do have to eat, do have to take a shower and all those things. But you want to be able to find a process, find time to continue that relationship if possible. I know it's hard, things get busy, and it happens just like anything, whether in person or online. There are some people that over time you may fall out of touch, but as Barry can tell you, you know what? Social media is also a great way to reconnect with people after 5, 10, 15, or how many years, Barry, was that?
Oh, God. 33.
Yep. So Barry recently connected with somebody from college, right? So you kind of go your separate ways. People from your first or second job, and it's amazing when you reconnect. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe time flew by, because we're all in the same boat, right? Having all that fun, you forget how much time goes by. But it's a great tool to find people. The other thing I just want to share is if people are helping you, what can you do to return the favor? How do you pay it back if possible? And my approach is paying it forward. There are times when I can help people, and sometimes they can help me, sometimes they can't, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, everything's going to come around. There are people out there who are in position to help, and there are times when I need help, and there are times when I can provide help. So if you can, feel free to reciprocate if you can. If not, I am a firm believer of paying it forward. And the last tip I want to share as we wrap it up, and again, this is based on some of the questions. I get this question a lot. How much time do I need to spend using social media or LinkedIn to make an impact, a significant impact in my career or my business? That's a great question. Um, The only thing I can tell people is that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And if you were going to go to the gym and you say, well, if I go to the gym, for 1 minute, if I go to the gym for 1 minute a day, how will that impact me versus going 1 hour a day versus 1 hour a week or 1 hour a month? So I think the great thing is when you think about investing in your relationship and nurturing, you're going to get a lot out of that. So Barry, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I think you have a couple quick tips that you want to share with everyone.
You know me, Steve. I always have a story, and this relates to that last question and your last point of getting out what you put into it with LinkedIn. Through social media, on the social side, I met someone who was the executive vice president of a very large company, and we've become friendly. I've had dinner with him when I go back to Los Angeles, and we talk all the time, and we text, and I sent him a connection request on LinkedIn 4 years ago. 4 years ago. We talk 2 to 3 times a week. And my connection request to him is still outstanding. And he recently went through some things, and he's trying to make a move. And I said to him, I'm like, well, are you using LinkedIn? And he said, no. And I'm like, dude, because he's from California, I'm allowed. Why aren't you using LinkedIn? Come on. I said, my connection request to you is still outstanding from 2015. What's up with that? And he was like, I know, I need to get better. And I said, look, I'm like, now you're probably overwhelmed. How many invitations to connect do you have sitting in your queue? And he goes, I don't know, probably a couple of hundred. I'm like, and what are the odds that one person there might have one person that they can introduce you to? I'm like, here's me, like my measly 500 connections or whatever. I think that maybe it's 700. I don't know. That's not the point. The point is, now I've gotten, and he's always making comments when I post on Instagram about networking. You're the guru. You're an influencer. You're the queen of LinkedIn. Well, then listen to what I'm telling you. I said, I'm giving you a homework assignment. I want you to start small. I want you to spend 15 minutes a week on LinkedIn. And if you have literally 200 connection requests, I want you to go through 10 a week. 10 a week. That's not even a lot. Go through 10 a week, look at the person's profile, and if you accept their connection request, send them a 2-sentence note saying thanks for the connection and why you're glad to connect to them. I guarantee you will find somebody in that pile that either knows someone at a target company or can personally help you. You need to use LinkedIn. It is not going to use itself. He's like, I know, you're right. So it only works if you use it, and any amount of time that you can contribute or that you can devote to using LinkedIn will eventually benefit you. It might not be instant gratification, but just use it, because it's not going to use itself.
Right. Well, and you know what, at the end of the day, and again, I get this question a lot, if you're not using it, your competitors are, your other organizations are, and so on one hand, it's not a question of if, it's really a question of when, right? Social media, networking, not going away anytime soon. If anything, it's probably going to become more involved. So one of the things I tell people, I can do virtually everything I need to do by having a cup of coffee in the morning. Granted, sometimes I'll have 2 cups of coffee. I tried to do it in the evening with alcohol, but it didn't really work well. But so, something as simple as having a cup of coffee and checking your email, again, providing it's something that's important and relevant to your business, you're going to get out of it what you put in. You're investing time, but you're also investing in yourself. So again, because of time, we took some of the questions that were emailed in about sharing some tips, and we're going to be wrapping it up. But just as a reminder, Next week, we'll be meeting at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be posting this with some notes in the next day or so. And then if you have any questions, and feel free to connect with Barry or I, will both love to connect with you. Certainly carry on the conversation offline if you have anything that we can help you with in the groups or on LinkedIn. Barry, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, just hope everybody's recovering from their turkey comas, and I'll look forward to seeing you guys all next week.
All right, well, that's good. Well, the funny part is I have no leftovers left. So Thanksgiving's over, onward and upward to the next holiday. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.